Good afternoon, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Book Flood podcast brought to you by goldenlibraries.com. I am your host, Tom Nixon. I am particularly pleased to have as the first guest Amanda Jones. She is a librarian who has been battling the book banning happening in Louisiana and across the U.S. Amanda is the author of That Librarian, The Fight Against Book Banning in America. Oprah Winfrey, I love this quote. Oprah Winfrey said, Amanda Jones started getting death threats, all for standing up for our right to read. But she's not stopped fighting against book bans or stopped advocating for access to diverse stories. Good afternoon, Amanda. Why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, and I just want to say I'm so honored to be your very first guest on your inaugural episode.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. So, my name is Amanda Jones, and this is my 24th year as an educator, my 10th year as a school librarian, all 24 years at the same exact school in my little small town, that at the same school that I attended when I was in middle school.
Wow.
And yeah, and I have a lot of what I call grand students, which are children of former students. And several of my coworkers are also former students of mine that are now adults. But yeah, I've been here for 24 years, and I am the current past president of the Louisiana Association of School Librarians as well.
Well, and you have a whole lot of other awards and everything going on there too, as I recall.
I do.
You do. And the interesting thing for me was pre-book banning. So you had things going on, and then you had them come for you.
Yes, I was actually the School Librarian of the Year presented by School Library Journal in 2021, and a 2021 Library Journal Mover and Shaker, which was a year before all of the book banning nonsense here in Louisiana.
And elsewhere, sadly.
Yes.
So how did book banning come to your part of the world?
We have we have an extremist group in Louisiana that has said that they are going to target all 64 parish library systems, because we're parishes, not counties, here in Louisiana. And they have so far targeted several. And one of the parishes that they targeted was my parish. And I had been keeping an eye on them in a neighboring parish, and when I saw them pop up in mine, I knew I needed to get to the library board meeting. And there were the very first in July of 2022, the very first issues we ever had in our parish public library system. A former library board of control member mentioned book signage and content, and I knew what she was going to do. I just knew it was the month after Pride Month, so I knew what signage and content were going to be. And so
Absolutely.
I went and gave just a general censorship speech. The same, but there was 20, 30 other people that spoke and said the same thing I did. And only two people disagreed with us or said the opposite. But somehow I woke up 4 days later after the meeting, a target of extremists, and they have posted lies about me and some really ugly memes about me. They've said that I've said things that I've never said, and so my reputation plummeted in my small town.
So a couple things. One, you don't work for the public library, correct?
Correct. Which is really, my battle is very different from a lot of other people, different in the fact that I am a school librarian, but I have not had a single issue at my school. My battle has been as a resident in my public library. I just happen to be a school librarian.
So how did, you talked a lot about growing up in that town. So I would imagine there's lots of folks in that same town that have been there forever like you. How did the community react to this?
Well, people that I've known my whole life were spreading these memes, these awful memes. And, there was a meme. So I gave a censorship speech, and I didn't talk about any books or anything in particular. I mostly just talked about library policy, challenge forms, and things like that. And But a man that I do not know, that I've never spoken to in my life, made a meme saying that I advocate teaching anal sex to 11-year-olds. And so, yeah, so that traveled around thousands of times in my community, and people that I had known my whole life just believed it. And so everybody, I was the topic of conversation for weeks in my community and all of the little local Facebook pages. And it's difficult to go online and see friends and people you've grown up with your whole life contributing and spreading, and they're like, "Oh, I guess you never can know someone." You've known me 44 years. Like you had 3 kids come through my school. I don't do these things, but people believe everything they see on the internet.
Feels a little bit like you ought to have air quotes around friends.
Yeah, I have, through a lot of intensive therapy, come to the realization that those people are not actually real friends, and it's been hard. I I had to come to terms with a lot of people that I surround myself with, and cut a lot of people off and make a lot of better choices with who I choose to spend my time with.
So why you? I mean, you said yourself there were many people that spoke at that meeting. Why you?
Well, I think my speech was just a normal, regular, everyday speech that any librarian would give. But I have had compliments from Terry Zuplat, who is President Obama's former speechwriter. He reached out to me. He read my speech, and he said it was a very well written speech. And he actually has a book coming out, and he wrote about me in my speech. But so I guess it was an okay speech, but I think that I was dressed up. I was wearing a suit, like a blazer, and I was a little more dressed up. I spoke first, and when I spoke, I said I was a resident and a library card holder since I was 5 in our public library. I
Right.
did mention that I was the president of the Louisiana Association of School Librarians, and I did mention that I was the SLJ Librarian of the Year. And the reason why was that so that the Library Board of Control would know that I am a librarian and I did know what I was talking about, because my speech did deal with quoting the American Library Association and quoting and talking about challenge and reconsideration policies that we already had in place. So I think it was like the knowledge that I gave, but also these people, they want to silence, when they start these smear campaigns,
Right.
the people that are pro censors, they want to silence people. Who better to silence than the award-winning local school librarian? Because if they could silence me, then everyone else was going to be quiet too. And effectively, that is exactly what happened. We had so many supporters at that meeting, and then after that, it plummeted, and there were only 2 or 3 supporters at each of the meetings. It's built back up. I formed a citizens alliance, and we've built, our numbers are pretty strong. But yeah, they essentially wanted to scare everybody. Nobody wanted to speak out because they didn't want to become the cautionary tale of Amanda Jones. But what these people did wrong, what they did incorrectly, is that they chose the wrong one. I guess they thought that I was going to just be silent and take it and just, I guess they wanted me to crawl in a hole and die and be quiet. But what they did was actually make me do the opposite. And so I still go to every meeting. I speak on podcasts. I write articles, and I have done the exact opposite. I wrote a book now.
You
So maybe they should have chosen a little wiser.
you have indeed, and I have read it. And this is actually coming out soon, folks. This is the hardback version. I got one of the paperback ones and read that one. It was interesting that even people who really truly are your friends still didn't necessarily want to go to those meetings, still didn't necessarily want to speak out or respond on Facebook, because what would happen to them if they did?
Yeah, because a lot of my friends are educators. And when there's a meme going around that you're doing horrible things with children and you're an educator, you can lose your job. And I mean, I don't do these things, and my school system knows that, and my school system has been very supportive of me. But it was rough. I really thought, oh my goodness, these people are going to believe, my
Right.
school system is going to believe. And I cut off anyone who actively trashed me online. That was my friend. I cut them off. They're no longer friends. But I had a lot of back and forth with myself and my therapist about, are they really friends if they don't speak out? And they are. It's a lot of people are scared, and I get that.
Oh,
I totally get that. I don't begrudge anyone that is a friend of mine that was scared or still is scared to speak out. I don't begrudge them that, and we are still friends. Now, if they were actively trashing me, that's a different story.
there's a difference. There's a
Yes.
difference. Well, and they have in front of them a good example of what happens if you do speak out. And you had a long history in your community, but maybe other folks don't, or maybe just they don't have your same life situation. You talked about that your family was very supportive. Some of your extended family even was very supportive. Not everybody's got that, and
Yes, exactly. And I will tell people, I'm married and my husband has a very good job. So if I was to lose my job, we'd be okay. And I know there's a lot of single parents that I work with, and they don't want to
right,
jeopardize anything. A lot of people I'm friends with, they have children that are in high school. They don't want their kids to be bullied if they're targeted. So I get it. I get it. And I don't begrudge them that not speaking out at all. It's hurtful. It's
certainly,
hurtful.
certainly,
And there's things like, and I wrote about this in my book. My school board representative at the time was I thought, a friend. And in 2021, when I got School Librarian of the Year, she stood up at a school board meeting was crying, saying, "You were one of the best things that's ever happened to this community, and you taught my daughter, and I just love you." And then you fast forward, and she wouldn't
right.
lift a finger to help me. And then, which I'm like, okay, that's fine. I didn't begrudge her that. But then she cut off contact. Then she started messaging me ugly things. And to the point where now she is our state representative in my area. And she actually filed a bill last legislative session, HB 777, to imprison librarians who attend American Library Association conferences. Imprison 2 years hard labor if you go to an American Library Association conference and you're reimbursed in any way through work. And that's not a friend. So
Well, that's not a friend, but that's also a little insanity running in that family. I'm beginning to think. I would almost understand. I wouldn't understand, but I almost understand if it was something along the lines of, if you do X, Y, and Z, we are going to punish you. Going to an ALA or AASL conference, it's hard to imagine how that it is bad for your system, is bad for you, is bad for the public.
she does the same. She's guilty of the same thing that everyone else in the community. They believe everything they see on social media, and she could have just called me and talked to me, and but she chose to believe. And I didn't. I changed her name in the book, and I stated in the book that I changed her name because people in my community will know who I'm talking about, but I did teach her child. I love her child. And I want to do right and set good examples. And I'm all about telling the truth in my book, but I'm not going to trash someone. I'm going to tell the truth of what happened, and I do in my book,
Sure.
but I don't go over the top lying and do what they, make memes. And I choose to rise above that, or at least try.
So a couple things. One of the things is you talk about your, maybe we call it political awakening or something, because who did you vote for in?
Oh, that's my biggest shame. I call it my
Yeah.
biggest shame. So in 2016, I did indeed vote for Donald Trump. And I wouldn't say I was a supporter. I was not a supporter. And I thought I was voting for the lesser of the two evils because that's what everybody else in my community, that's what my parents were telling me. And I was apathetic and I didn't pay attention to what was happening. And that's the way I voted. But I even said, when I went to vote for him, I didn't like him. And I felt like I
Right.
kind of threw up a little in my mouth when I did it. But I do call it my biggest shame because would never have voted for him if I had realized the hate that he was going to usher into our country and make it okay for people to be just so hateful and awful and ugly. And I will spend the rest of my life atoning for it, because I think that people like me that voted for him because we didn't take the time to look into things and we voted the way our parents or our community told us to vote. I think I am a part of this book banning. I helped contribute to what's happening now, and I'm not proud of that. And I will.
Well, and I would say I think all of us did in some way or another, because we didn't push back. There was a lot of hype there, and we didn't push back quickly enough, loudly enough.
And I'm embarrassed about it. Like I didn't want to write about it, but I figure you have to be honest and truthful. So
I wouldn't have mentioned it if it wasn't in the book. So people are going to
Yeah.
read this, right? How did the book come about?
Okay, so funnily enough, the people that are harassing me all the time will tell you, they'll say, this is the latest rumor, that I have my GoFundMe, which is for my law expenses because I am in a court battle with these people. They said that I used my GoFundMe and self-published. But no, one of them even said I orchestrated all of this on purpose so I could get a book deal, which is like ridiculous. No, I actually. Anton Mueller, who is a senior editor at Bloomsbury, heard me on the New York Times First Person podcast, and he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I said, "Well, not seriously, but not seriously, but my therapist had told me to journal, and I had been journaling things, and a friend had said, 'Hey, you should write a book.'" And so in my phone on the notes app, I was like, if I was going to write a book, what would my chapters be about? And so I had like some notes in the app. But no, I wasn't serious about it until I was asked. It's not something I had sought out for myself. And I realize that not everybody's that lucky to be
Well,
approached.
And it's funny though, because you don't have to work that hard. It says Bloomsbury right on the front, right on the
Right?
back. What advice can you offer other librarians? This is not just your parish.
No, it's all over the United States. And I'm in a lot of librarian Facebook groups, and I see a lot of denial in these groups. Anyone time someone breaks up book banning, I see other librarians that are like, "Oh, well, I'm not worried about it because it's not happening to me." And my comment is, yet. Yet. And my advice is to pay attention. Look at your city council and your school board agendas and see what they say and what's popping up, and make sure you have a policy. Make sure your collection development policy and your reconsideration and your challenge policies are solid, and follow those policies to a T.
Right.
And not be apathetic. It really, I got to say, I've got a little anger for school librarians in particular. School librarians in particular that have been burying their heads in the sand, and I don't understand it, because even before it happened to me, I was speaking out against censorship. I had a year, almost I think a year before I was targeted, I had done a censorship panel with Nikki Grimes, author Nikki Grimes, and like I had talked about it. And I think, you've got to pay attention and you've got to vote. And don't vote like I did in 2016.
Well, it's interesting because when around the same time this was happening in Louisiana, it was happening in Florida, it was happening in Texas. So those of us sitting out here in California were going, well, yeah, but it couldn't happen here. I mentioned to you before the podcast that my last job, I managed libraries for Fresno Unified. We have 90 libraries in Fresno Unified. It can happen here. I can assure you it can happen here, because not to your extent, certainly. But if I had to have some of those conversations and made sure things are in place, absolutely. Because it's everywhere.
And I do have school librarian friends who have had challenges and attempts at banning in California. Mm-hmm. And even I know in Huntington Beach City, I think is in California. Is that in California?
Yep.
There's some huge issues of book banning in Huntington Beach.
Right.
In
Right.
California. And I thought it was a red state problem. I thought it was, but I have friends in New Jersey and Illinois. I have friends in Chicago, which I would never have thought.
Right.
But it's everywhere. Once once an extremist gets it in their head that they're going to target the library, it doesn't matter where you are. They will. It doesn't matter if you're red or blue or it doesn't matter. It can happen anywhere.
Well, because you have in California, for example, what the country sees or believes they see can be very different. Yes, we're very much a blue state, but we have red counties. Oh my, do we have some? And large chunks of the state.
And can I say something about the red versus blue?
Sure.
Because a lot of my mom, I'll preface it with this. My mom said, Amanda, you talk about politics when you talk about book banning, and I said, but Mom, there's only one party that is pushing the book banning, and I said it's kind of like there's that old math phrase like every square is a rectangle or every rectangle is a square, but not, you know what I'm saying? And so yeah, not every Republican is pro censorship, but all of the ones that are pushing pro censorship are Republicans, and it's an alt-right extremist faction. But I tell my parents, those of you, my mom and dad truly believe in the Constitution and are against book banning, and I'm telling them you got to speak out to the, I don't want to say regular, to the moderate Republicans in your party.
Right.
And I actually am still a registered Republican. I haven't voted that way in a long time, but I'm still technically a registered Republican, mostly for laziness of switching.
I'm a registered neither, which you can do here, but occasionally I will have to go back and forth because in the last decade or so, they changed a little bit how primaries work in California, and so.
Yep.
So, in conclusion, here we are. I wanted to thank you for coming and sharing this. I know you're out there doing this a lot, so I appreciate you coming to this, my first podcast. I did want to let folks know that there will be a link for the book in the show notes. Hope you will go out and buy it. Tell us when it hits bookstand.
August 27th. And that's also when the audiobook hits at the same time. And I recorded my own audiobook, which I'm really excited about.
Did you really?
I did. It was like 40 hours of studio time. But yeah, they let me. And I'm very lucky because I know they don't let a lot of authors. So I think it's because of my country twang.
Oh, there you go. And they wanted a nice Southern voice.
Yeah.
No, they don't a lot. And this is a sizable book.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was I think 5-6 days, and then I was there 6 to 8 hours, and my director of the audiobook is from California, so shout out to Rhett because he zoomed in and to the studio in Baton Rouge, and I'm really proud of the audiobook. So.
Oh, nice. Now I will have to buy the audiobook as well because I want to hear it. Anything else you want to say in conclusion?
Just, maybe remind everybody not to believe everything they see on social media, and make sure you're checking out books from your public library, and supporting them and sending them positive messages. And just thanks again for letting me be on your very first podcast episode.
Oh, thank you so much, Amanda. I want to let everybody know that this will be up shortly. And the next podcast is actually going to be out next week. Already working on that. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time. Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.